Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. It is Monday, June 26, 2023, and I call the June 26, 2023 school board meeting to order. It is 6:05 p.m. Oh, goodness. We're in room conference room C of the Fisher Administration Building at 12121 West North Avenue. Dr. Means, please call the roll.
Roy.
Here.
Mr. Morris. Here. Mr. Meyer. Here. Dr. Tissebanger.
Here.
Dr. Hoig.
Here.
Ms. Himmerl. Problem.
Here.
Ms. Willis is excused this evening. We will begin with public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. The board, following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issues raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with a member or members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. Do we have any public comment in the room this evening? Sir?
So I noticed last time when I was here, there was a little static, so I just want to restate something so it's in the record. Black kids have about a 2.5% chance of being able to read and do math at grade level in Wauwatosa. I've come to realize what's more important than that. It's two things: the $15,000 that the district gets for them physically being here and teaching them to expand their sexuality. I didn't know I was talking with a gender transition mental health expert, so I thought I'd educate myself a little bit on Dr. John Money, the godfather of gender identity. He's the one who coined the term. He stated, for those born and educated after the year 2000, we will be their history, and they will be mystified by our self-important, moralistic ignorance of the principles of sexual and erotic development in childhood. I get why we couldn't tell people it was happening. Like, for instance, 1 year ago, it was crazy to say a girl at the age of 16 was having her healthy breasts removed. Now we know there was always a good reason, and it's been happening for years. Now, today, we follow the majority of Dr. Money's teachings, not embracing key aspects. We are both hurting adults and kids. He states, a childhood sexual experience, such as being a partner with a relative or an older person, need not necessarily affect a child adversely. He wrote the foreword in a book that advocated for men as old as 60 to have lovers as young as 11. Efforts in California have made same-sex offenders legal in an effort to help the LGBTQ plus community, says Senator Scott Wiener. Now a 20-year-old can legally have sex with a 12-year-old. So many in the field of gender ideology call for the normalization of minor attracted people that we used to call pedophiles, even eliminating the age of consent. In Minnesota, an effort is underway to make these people a protected class. Why are we denying young boys the possibility of a male lover in his 60s that could bring him into adulthood the way Dr. John Money advocated for? Dr. Money was right. Being born after 2000 means a totally different sexual upbringing. Soon we could have teachers not only teaching our kids sexual education, but showing them how to enjoy a positive relationship with sex. Ms. Hogue will be seen as a hero who got all of us to see the light. Children's Hospital will be right there to help all the kids with expensive surgeries and years of hormone therapy side effects until the day they die. I hope you get a corner office for all that you've done. With your good work, soon an old man will be able to make sweet, sweet love to a young boy. You can say it's not happening, but we were told that before. And I've read about this man. It's
Paul,
very sick. And that's it.
you need to direct your comments to the board, not attack individual board members.
Understood.
And your comments are off the rails at this point.
I mean, this is all.
You can come in and say whatever you want. I just don't know the relevance connected in any way to the school district or the school board.
I mean, this is all in the curriculum. I kind of over my limit. Is this a discussion?
No,
at
it's
this
not.
Point?
Your time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
high depth felt palette. I'm pretty happy somebody just handed out a cookie when you came in the room. But I'm also very excited. I sent a message to Dr. Means and he just told me about the May 6th All City Strings Festival. The board voted on and approved to have the concert at AmFam Field. And I was inquiring, why aren't we celebrating these kids? There's nothing on any district communication showing pictures, videos, and he's waiting, I think, for the teachers to get that information to him or Miss Ellis, the communications person. But I'd encourage families, guests, PTAs who were there to send their information. We had 1,100 kids, plus our music educators. We spent a lot of money, $26,000 to rent AmFam Field that the board approved, but we need to celebrate these children and spread that word out there of their accomplishments and their musical accomplishments. So thank you.
Thank you. I know my social media was lit up that day with lots of parents excited about being there. So
We need a district to do it.
and the district's got such a backlog of so many things that they've been celebrating online that I'm sure it's all keyed up. Thank you. Jamie, anything online?
Yes, we do have one hand raised. Carrie, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Carrie Sykes, 2672 North 114th Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, if I misread it or overlooked, I apologize. I heard on the last school board meeting that there was I believe it's a vote for today. That's what I'm trying to verify if it's for the new printer software. I heard the ideas of, and I've used something similar at my company. I was just wondering, what is the cost of that? Number one. And number two, what has the district considered if they incentivize the staff to see like how much they could potentially reduce? Because I heard that, you know, big print jobs should ideally be done in 2 to 3 days at the main copy center. So do they even know that? Are they incentivized to make sure that they're doing that? Because it sounds like the software just lets you know that, hey, that you could do this. To me, that would seem that potentially we could save money for a year or see how that goes before potentially providing. And again, I don't know the cost. You could incentivize, you could have up to $500 for reward spread out around the staff. I couldn't tell if the benefit was if your staff going in and out of different buildings, and that's why the printer software is going to work better versus if you're just at one of the buildings. But I just wonder again how much data analytics went into. It sounds like they thought it was going to save money because it saves on costs being wasted, but just curious if you guys have considered other options or incentivizing for a year before deciding to pay for the software, depending on how much it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brightman, I think when we get to the point on the agenda, if you can comment on it. Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
Thank you, Jamie. We will then move to the consent agenda. Are there any items in the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
It is recommended that the school board approve the consent agenda, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rooney. Any board comment or questions on this item?
I just want to give kudos to Ms. Zelazoski. It is so exciting to see all of these Eisenhower hires on the consent agenda for this week. So amazing work from you and your team. Thank you so much for prioritizing this and making sure that we are meeting the needs of the Eisenhower community.
I apologize. I should have called for a separate vote on the liability insurance question. I would have abstained on that with a separate vote, and I plan to abstain now on the consent agenda due to that item, just so people understand why I will cast my vote the way I will. I'm fine with just continuing to proceed as we are. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like to echo Dr. Hoyt's comments. I know the team, there was a lot of people involved in interviews. The Eisenhower staff who were participating, families who participated, Mr. Stein who participated. I believe had some cake earlier this evening, is the rumor, and a whole lot of staff from the central office really engaged in doing an incredible amount of work really quickly. I know we are hiring a lot of people right now across the district. This is the hiring season in K-12 education. So kudos to everybody for the incredible effort and the positive early returns. Any community comment on this item, the consent agenda? Jamie, anything online?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay. I will call the roll. Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Mr. Morse,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Abstain.
Dr. Jessup Ingers, yes. Dr. Hoyk,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Rowland,
Yes.
and that passes. Thank you all very much.
Dr. Jessup Ingers, I would hate to let this go by, this agenda item go by without acknowledging on the consent agenda. I believe Mr. Stein was officially moved to and appointed this evening with your affirmative vote as principal of Eisenhower. Mr. Stein's a resident of Wauwatosa. He's a graduate of Wauwatosa East. It'll be interesting to see how he changes his allegiance. Now it's a requirement to be at Eisenhower. And so we're very proud of Mr. Stein. We know that he's ready. He's jumped in and demonstrated his readiness already. We just know good things are ahead for Eisenhower and his leadership. So congratulations to you. I'm also, it's bittersweet. We're very proud of Miss Leah Claybor. And Leah is, as a result of your vote, is now going to become our Director of Human Resources. Human Resources was the only division, if you will, in our district office that only had Ms. Zelazoski. So as you speak of the effort that was put forth with hiring for the one school in our district, Sarah has all of our schools to really take account for. And she didn't have anyone else. I think her staff has reminded me that this is the only department where she has no one else to lean on. For us to get someone of the caliber of Leah, just not because Leah's in the district, she did amazing work at West. And I know at times we've had some challenging times at West. The solace that I've always taken is that I knew Leah Claybor was there, and some of the kiddos who were in the midst of those challenges, they relied on her. And so I think it's bittersweet that she will now be helping all of our schools navigate the challenges of human resources. But I know this is someone who cares deeply about kids, and the kids care deeply about her. And I know she's going to add so much richness to human resources. These are just two really strong people here. As I'm looking out into the crowd, I'm really proud of the fact that we're building the capacity of our assistant principals and our deans, and we're building our bench as a result. And so I think this is just two really strong examples. You're going to get another example in a few minutes. As Sarah's kind of saying, stop talking and let me get to business here. But I didn't want that to go by without acknowledging those folks. Dr. Hoyt, thank you for acknowledging the work around Eisenhower. I want to start by thanking the Parent Teacher Association. They showed up and showed out in terms of being there. I know that a lot of our candidates referenced last week, Thursday. That's pretty impressive to have a PTA at a job fair on a Thursday night. I want to thank all of our, and it's just not our administrators. We had a lot of our instructional coaches and academic specialists who did a lot of the background things, such as developing assignments for the candidates to fulfill before they even came in to interview with us. I think having some type of activity that you can show that you can teach is really important. And I think it's important for the Eisenhower community to know we're not just hiring people for hiring sake, we feel confident about these people that we're hiring. When I look at where we currently stand, there are 19 classroom positions that we have to hire for. And as of right now, I think Mr. Stein may have closed the deal on one of our positions. We have 16 of the 19 hired right now. We've called a meeting of the board for this Thursday. We are hopeful that we'll be able to bring more to you. But that's classroom teachers. Then we have a social worker, a social emotional learning specialist. We have a special education teacher and a music teacher that we're still trying to hire. So that brings us to 23. And of those remaining 4 positions, we think we have a good lead on 3 of the 4, with the rest of this week still ahead of us. So I want to personally thank a lot of people who put a lot of time into making sure that this is the first step. I think there's a lot of steps. And I would just conclude by saying, from my role, while I'm very proud of the work that we've put in place to get here, I am also regretful that we're in this place. And so we're committed to making sure that we're able to look upward and onward and not have this type of situation occur again. That's why we're so excited about the people that we're hiring and Mr. Stein. But I think it would be, I don't want to be too optimistic and too rosy and not acknowledge that if it was up to us, we would have never even landed here in the first place. And so we're looking forward to continuing to improve our systems and avoid this from ever happening again. But upon us knowing that there was something that needed to happen, I hope we've demonstrated that we responded swiftly and we'll continue to respond. And Mr. Stein and I talked today about making sure that we're getting the new teachers in now and giving them training. And I'm meeting with the external coach around PBIS tomorrow to make sure that they're ready to start working with Mr. Stein and teachers in July. So I think there's a lot of things that we are learning that will not only apply to Eisenhower, but to the entire district. And so from that perspective, I'm really pleased. Thank you for allowing me to have a few minutes to acknowledge the work.
And my apologies to our two, not new hires, but newly minted folks in new leadership roles. I totally in my mind had it as separate agenda items that you're on. Do we have a speech from either of them prepared for this evening, possibly a PowerPoint? Any comments? I would only if you'd like to come up and share anything.
Pure pressure.
Hello, everyone. Obviously, Jordan Stein, new principal at Eisenhower. It's been a whirlwind of 2 weeks, but we got our parent meeting or meet the principal night tonight, and it was just great to get connected with the community. Hour and a half, steady flow of kids and families and meeting everybody. Eisenhower is in a unique position, but it's a committed community. It's an advocate, community that advocates for the building. So I'm really excited for this opportunity and I can't wait to see what happens in the years to come. Go Eagles.
Thank you so much. I'm Leah Claybor. I was the assistant principal at West for 5 years. And I agree, the bittersweet feeling is there. Sarah, I'm looking at you like I got a lot of good things coming though. I've really enjoyed working in the district these past 5 years. I have built great relationships with families in the community. I am so excited and think this board is really a symbol of where Wauwatosa is in attracting teachers. I think what we just talked about at Eisenhower and bringing that many people on, we are at a great place for bringing new, excited educators that want to validate students to our walls. And so I'm just really excited to be part of that work with a great team. We went to a game show place today. So I'm really excited for the work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Congrats to everybody. I'm now going to move us into strategic goal 4, high quality staff. Action to approve the 23-24 administrative contract of Austin Carricker as associate principal of Wauwatosa East High School, effective July 1, 2023 for 200 and I feel like I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's Austin's Carricker because we're about to have a motion that's going to do the whole same thing. Jenny, can I have you read this one? Oh.
It is recommended that the school board approve the 2023-2024 administrative contract of Austin Carricker as associate principal of Wauwatosa East High School effective July 1, 2023 for 221 days per year at an annual salary of $90,000, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, Ms. Zalazowski?
Good evening. I'm really pleased to be here this evening. This is an exciting night to see, as Dr. Means mentioned, members of our team that the organization has invested in and supported their growth move into some advanced leadership positions, one of whom is Mr. Carricker. This is really, in my understanding, the first time that with the advent of our dean positions at our secondary schools, we were really starting to groom a bench of future leaders in that respect, not just to move into principal positions, but that had the capacity to work in that AP role, work with some really talented principals themselves. And so when Ms. McGinnity decided to go ahead and move on from her role at East, right away we knew that the opportunity to post that vacancy internally and to consider some of our current talent seemed like the right idea. And we were very fortunate to gain Mr. Carricker's interest, and I'm really pleased to present him for approval of his contract this evening.
Thank you. Any board comments or questions on this item? I have two. First is from Ms. McGinnity. I've never seen so many people sad on social media for an AP to leave. The AP position is a challenging one. And to have that many people saddened really speaks to the level of relationships and everything that you being here this evening. So thank you for your time in the district. And we're sad to see you go, but wish you our very best. I've been hearing about Mr. Carricker since my daughter had him about 4 years ago. The entire year, she was trying to figure out what he actually thought about any given thing in social studies. She's like, what is his perspective? He's always asking me the other perspective, but it's every perspective. So I know you did outstanding work in the classroom, and I'm excited that you're in this role. So congratulations. I'm sure she will still be thoroughly perplexed by your Socratic dialogue with her. Looking forward to stories. Any community comments on these items? From this item? None? I will call the roll. Dr. Worley.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Dr. Joseph Ingers, yes. Dr. Hoy.
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Rowe.
Yes.
Congratulations. Speech.
I'm Austin Carricker. I did want to thank you guys for just the humbling opportunity for all that you have done and invested in me over the last few years. I'm also a Wauwatosa East alum and grad, and coming to East as a private school transfer was very intimidating, but East really became a home for me. And so when the opportunity came to go back to East, I was so excited to pay back all that East did for me and transform me into who I am today. And so it's very surreal, but I'm very excited to continue that work and watch the students I once had at Longfellow grow into young learners. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Zalazowski. Next up is Strategic Goal 6, Operations, Action to approve the 23-24 school year budget. Dr. Worley will start with the motion.
It is recommended that the school board approve the 2023-2024 school year budget, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So significant change, but just a couple changes to the budget the board saw at the last board meeting, and we discussed briefly 2 weeks ago, and a lot of changes in 2 weeks, right? So Joint Finance had released some tentative media accounts of what they might have in a budget proposal, but we weren't quite sure what that meant yet. So Tuesday following the last board meeting, Joint Finance did go into open session and approve a preliminary recommendation that went to the legislature. It's still being processed through that platform right now, so nothing is finalized yet, but we do know what it includes. We've updated, and in the budget document, you'll see some yellow highlighted cells. Those are the updates to what we see. But essentially going from, we had predicted a $350 increase per student for year one of the biennial budget. It looks like it's gonna be $325 for both years. So year one will be $325, not $350. So that reduces revenue authority by about $147,000 in the district with that item. The second main one is a reduction in special education aid from 60%, which we thought was viable. It was something that legislators had communicated was kind of a reasonable lift and something that they could get behind. It turns out it was not in part of the recommendation by Joint Finance. Joint Finance increased from 30% to 33.3% with that aid reimbursement threshold. And so in our budget magnitude, that's about a $3.5 million reduction in revenue in Fund 27, thereby increasing our Fund 10 expense that covers Fund 27 costs. So it's an increase to expenses on our side. So we've updated the budget document to include those parameters. There's some other things in the state budget which aren't quantified yet. Some mental health funding, some other new aids and some increases to some categorical aids, but there's not enough information yet. And they're not as significant in the scheme of things. But we'll quantify those well in advance of the October budget adoption, which comes up in a couple of months. I did highlight those again in page yellow on pages 3 to 6 of the attached budget document. In page 5, you'll see the budget deficiency line went from $4.6 million 2 weeks ago to just over $7.2 million. So that is the financial impact of the biennial state budget. Personally, I'm a little disappointed in the way that this landed for not just Wauwatosa, but public schools. The state coffers or resources are there to cover the requests that the board had in the legislative platform. We didn't think the biennial budget would come in at that level necessarily, but it fell short, I think, of where our expectations were and where the feedback was that we were getting from area legislators, where it might land. Again, there's some additional elements to the state financial budget or the biennial budget. And again, we'll update those as we get closer to the October adoption. So I guess I'll take any questions the board may have on the budget packet, or
I just would, if I may add an addendum, not to be in conflict with my colleague's statement, I don't know if I'm disappointed. I think there was a message delivered to school boards and to school districts. And the message is that what we consider to be adequately funding schools and what our state leaders consider to be what funding schools or adequately funding schools are two very separate things right now. And I take solace in the fact that we do have a mechanism. And when I say we, I mean K-12 education. There's a mechanism that we have available that candidly the municipalities, if we talk to our dear mayor class of 1972 of Wauwatosa East, Dennis McBride, we have a mechanism in K-12 education that municipalities don't have, that county governments don't have, and that is we can control our destiny if we have to, if we don't see the level of funding coming from the state. As I talk to colleagues across Wisconsin, that is the resounding message that people are taking away from this most recent budgetary cycle. So I guess I'm not disappointed in the legislature. I think us browbeating or saying things that are not flattering to the legislature doesn't profit us any. I respect the challenge that they have, and they have priorities too, and they've made their priorities known. But K-12 education is funded in a way where there are mechanisms. There's at least one or two mechanisms that we are able to control our destiny ourselves to a certain degree. I think we have to do a lot of work to even invoke those mechanisms, but that would be my message to the board and the community as we were on the eve of this new 2023-2025 state budget.
A little disappointed.
I'm speaking on my behalf and not the board, but I will say that I am disappointed. And I think those parts there is that when you think about everything that the state is saying that they're trying to do for K through 12 public schools, giving that same energy and all that rah that we give, and we think about the choice schools and the other funding, we start talking about these big numbers, and then we overlay, what is this surplus that we have? What's it for? If it's not for the children, which are supposed to be the future of the communities that they serve and they live in, what are we doing? So I will express my, not necessarily dissatisfaction, but disappointment, and hope that the future does hold some things. And I know Mr. Myers pointed out some things that we can't rest on our laurels and expect the states are going to hold up, and we have to expect that that's coming, because just like we saw, it didn't. But then we have to make other choices in the future that are hopefully in our best interest and not rely on those parts.
Mr. Meyer.
I can't support these levels of spending with the uncertainty we have in revenue. I hope we quickly proceed down the process to go to referendum. When Act 10 hit a few years ago, we had to make do with the money we had. And aligned with what Dr. Means has just said, not his words, but my words, we have to assume we have less money until it's proven we have more money. And it seems the only route for that, it seems, is referendum. So we aren't agenda to talk about referendum tonight, but if we had that in our future in a more positive way, I could support the spending we have, but I'm a pragmatist, not a happy pragmatist, but a pragmatist. So thank you for hearing my comments.
Dr. Worley.
I also share, I have some disappointment about where the state budget discussion has ended up. And I don't think that, and I say that as a parent, and I say that as a resident and taxpayer of the state, that I don't think we're doing enough for our kids and for our future and for the practicalities of the future of the state. I think we missed, and I hope that we'll see the next time, or the ways we move in the next few years will look different, and that we'll hit on it, and we will prepare our communities and our children to be what they can be. I don't think this decision that's been made is really heading that way, but I hope we can find a new way to get there.
Any other comments? My comments on kind of on how things have played out in the last several months. Where I take some solace is that we have, over the course of the last 18 months, developed and approved by the board a community-driven strategic plan. So the community has done a lot of work to articulate what is its values, what is its priorities. It's laid out for the next 3 years. Kicking off tomorrow, I believe, the TOSA 2075 task force is in place and is going to be taking a look at what is the future of what would TOSA look like. From our footprint to run the whole gamut of key questions that we need to consider as a community. I think we're in a really good position to have community conversations around what are our priorities, what types of resources do we need to meet those priorities and goals as a community. And Mr. Meyer, I'm on board that I think the community is going to need to make a decision very soon about, does the community want to invest resources in the schools to maintain what they've had previously, and hopefully strategically also find ways to do a bit more than we've been doing over the last couple of years in terms of resourcing our schools. So I'm feeling good about where organizationally we are at. I'm disappointed that there were not strategic investments made in K-12 education in this budget cycle, particularly in our special education funding. That's the one I thought, Mr. Brightman, I know you had conversations, I think consistently I'd heard similar things, that there was a lot of hope that we were going to resource there. And even if we would have resourced public education and choice schools at the same level of priority in this budget, I'd be feeling really good right now. And I'm not feeling as good as I'd hoped. Where I'm feeling good is I think we've set ourselves up to have some really robust community conversations. I think the board will need to do a lot of listening and some community engagement sessions over the course of the next year to kind of further engage the community on some key topics. But I think I'm hopeful in that. I wanted to, I know we're responding a bit to kind of some of the legislative things that we've learned. Any questions folks have about the budget itself? Dr. Hoyk.
Sort of ancillary but connected to our state funding. Can you remind me when the ESSER funds, when those ESSER funded positions run out, and how many, if you remember, how many FTE we have that are ESSER funded right now?
Yeah, we'll have the ESSER funding through the next fiscal year, so through 23-24, okay. And then it sunsets. I believe it's September 1 of that next school year. You have to spend all the dollars down by that time. As far as number of positions, I'll have to come back with that. They're all included within the budget side. Our goal we've talked about our budget scorecard was to fund at least half of those positions as remaining. So it's about $1.8 million per year in ESSER funded positions. So about $850,000. We'd like to fund more than that, but that was just in our budget discussions kind of leading to this budget cycle that we landed on. But we'll have to have discussions on all of those positions. They're all student facing. So
Dr. Hoyk, I believe Ms. Elwazowski can follow up with this tomorrow, but I know for a fact that we have a total of 9 FTEs on the social emotional services side. Four of the FTEs are committed to mental health specialists at the secondary level, and then I think another 5 are additional supports throughout the district at the elementary level. That's part of the ESSER funded. Then I think we funded 6, but I could be wrong. I think it was 6 academic specialists out of our ESSER funds as well. Is that correct?
It sounds good.
We're close.
And there's some partially funded positions too, but yes.
But when I think about the big ticket items, Dr. Hoyt, those are the ones that we're really concerned about. I would just remind the public and the board that when we presented our ESSER plan back in February of 2 years ago, we said that we would give these staff members a total, we would give them warning by this fall. And that we were approaching these positions as if they were grant funded in many ways. And so I've kind of created a preliminary deadline of October 31st being a deadline where we are going to notify staff what's our plan for, in essence, the 2024-2025 school year. How many of these positions can we financially carry on and keep? We've talked a lot about the FTEs that was invested on the mental health, social emotional services side. I would want to echo the warning that Ms. Jenny Foch gave us back in March, where she said that we don't have an academic support structure to help our students who are in the lowest 10 percentile for academics in our schools. And so often we talk about behavioral challenges. The young people who are academically behind, not always, but in many times you can make a connection and a nexus between their struggle academically and the type of support we're able to give them to catch up and get on grade level. We don't have enough academic support specialists to even help those young people who are in 3rd grade but reading at the 1st grade level. When we're not able to catch them up, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. I wanted to point that out in terms of we've invested our funds and from an ESSER perspective in that space as well. And I can tell you, our teachers will tell you, and what we've currently invested in all of these ESSER positions is not enough. These are the forward facing, on the ground, working with students positions that's really necessary. But that's beyond what you asked. We intend to let people know by October 31st what our plans are moving forward.
Mr. Ryman, so this is 1 year. So we've got for the community, there may be confusion here because when we're talking about the state budgeting process, we're talking about a 2-year budget. For the school district, we're really talking about a single year budget.
Correct.
So we have a good sense for next year what the financials will look like because they're deciding that now. They haven't finalized yet. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Once they finalize all the parameters, we'll run projections again to show year 2 of the budget, along with a 5-year projection, actually, to show what that would look like too. But right now, we're just asking the board to adopt a 1-year budget for the next school year. Correct.
If we were to come forward with just a purely balanced budget this year, what's the number we would need to cut from this budget to achieve that?
That would be the $7.3 million.
Point of clarification, please. The term balanced budget or deficit, I mean, Dr. Means has used a little different terminology than we always used to have. So can we tell the community, when you say balanced, well, the books are balanced, the accounting is accurate, but we're spending more than we're taking in. Is that what we're asking? But kind of so people understand what we're saying.
Yeah. So we are planned to spend $7.3 million this year, more than we will be taking in revenues.
That is correct.
Okay. So we are in, for the short term, a very enviable space compared to our peer school districts, that our fund balance allows us to do that.
That's correct. We've had a lot of discussion on the cash position and the investment of that, given the time we're in. Correct.
So not a long-term solution, but a short-term solution is to spend down our fund balance to a greater degree than we have historically. Correct.
Okay. Which is a strategy. This is where I appreciate the disappointment from some. This is a state strategy. The legislature doesn't like the fact that school districts have healthy fund balances. In fact, there's an element of, there's some legislators who resent it. They resent that school districts they've done this. And from a fiscal perspective, I understand why. Because a legislator would say, in order for a school district to have a fund balance, a cash position that is healthy like we have, that means the taxpayers have been taxed, and those funds that were supposed to go towards services for children were not utilized that school year. So if I'm a state legislator, I do understand the fiscal philosophy. And so part of their philosophy is we want to provide tax breaks to Wisconsin residents. We believe the tax breaks will generate more business in the state and make it more appealing for businesses to come here. And from a governmental oversight perspective, the school board is an agent of the state legislature, as the Constitution states. The legislators are saying, well, wait a minute, if all of these school districts have fund balances, if that's what you need to do to bridge yourself to continue to serve your students, well, then that's what you should do. So I think there are mechanisms that are in place that, again, that's what I meant by we have certain mechanisms as a K-12 institution that certain other governmental bodies don't have. And what it's requiring right now is more of a local conversation in regards to what you want your school systems to look like, and that's okay. I would share your disappointment in terms of where the state of public education is for the state of Wisconsin. I do share your disappointment there, but I have now officially made the pivot of I'm not relying on the state legislature to control or to give us a pathway for the children of Wauwatosa. If we continue to go down the pathway from a legislative standpoint of relying on a legislator from Alaska to help us in Wauwatosa, because that's the structure we have right now. If we continue to believe in the common good and that the legislators are going to rally around K-12 education in Wisconsin, I think they've shown us who they are. And that's okay. I'm not begrudging them for that's their philosophy. But what we have to do now for the children of Wauwatosa is to make decisions. And then I think part of the making decisions is to hold us accountable and to hold us responsible for laying out all the different options so then people can make a wise and an educated and an informed decision. I think that's the lift that Mr. Brightman and I will have to engage in over the next few years. But for me, this most recent budget cycle has provided clarity in a way that I think I've never had before, where in the past, K-12 leaders at the board level and at the administrative level, we've lobbied legislators, and we go to Madison, we go to the Capitol, and we say our piece. And I've seen that happen for 20 plus years now. And over time, that strategy has continued to dwindle in its effectiveness. It's not effective anymore. And so we have to turn inward and stop looking to a state body to help preserve the education that we want to provide to kids in Wauwatosa.
Dr. Justin. I can hear the exhaustion that must bring, but my mindset's a little different in that I think that if we think in terms of a social contract or a way of putting a society together, that I think a lot of people do feel that they've contributed to public education by contributing to state taxes. And that understanding that to come and now say, now can you contribute locally to public education means that some of us are going to feel that social contract is broken. And so I see it a little bit differently than you do. I do see that the exhaustion of constantly asking and not getting, this brings some more clarity, right? Okay, it's not going to happen that way. But when we think about peer states or states that we want to move ahead of, I know there's some that don't put a lot in, but there are some that put a lot in. And I just think generally the public expectation is I've done that contribution. And I think we'll have to really work to get to that large understanding and to help the public to ask them on their own as well. Why? But I feel like if a public person in the public feels like they're giving twice, then that question has to go to their legislator to ask, why is this happening? But I think we will hear that as we move.
I think that's fair. And believe me, we're aligned. And so, I understand what you're saying. I think the complexity to this budget cycle is that Governor Evers, who I don't know of any state in Wisconsin or any state in the country that would have a stronger advocate in the governor's mansion than Wisconsin. This is the deal that he cut with the legislators. So if this is the deal that he landed on and has said in his press releases, this is the most money ever invested in public K-12 public education, then that's a signal. That to me, that's a signal of us. Everyone is indicating and signaling to us that this is as much as you're going to get for this cycle. Even if the former state superintendent of schools have said, because it's not so much what the legislature is saying, because I think we unfairly go after them sometimes in K-12 education. The education governor, in essence, said, here's the package. And in fact, in his press release said, and this is the most money ever invested in K-12 education. So I think that social contract, the moral imperative, I think it starts with us talking with our governor and reestablishing what we believe we need to see. I know he believes in K-12 education. I know he knows it's the backbone of our state. But in fairness to our legislative leaders, I think that conversation in terms of the social construct has to start with at the governor's mansion. Because I think so often we in this conversation, we have respectfully avoided having that conversation of there was a settlement made that was announced 2 weeks ago, and all parties were at the table when that was made.
Sure.
So I agree with everything that's been said. Now, and then I'll add a 7-member school board. We are an ensemble of voices. And I happen to be the voice that, as I said, I'm an unhappy pragmatist. And in this case, the analogy to a household, I think, is helpful. Yeah, I should have gotten that other job offer. I should have gotten the promotion. I should have gotten the cost of living raise. I shouldn't have had to replace the roof 3 years earlier than I planned. I shouldn't have had healthcare expenses that no one else had because something happened. Well, now there's those households who figure out how to spend within the money they have, and those that don't. Those that don't figure it out have to start paying interest. And we know on loans and short-term borrowing or credit card and so I don't like it that we only have the money we have. We should have more, but it is only the money that we have, and we have to now start to figure it out to make do with what we have, and also pursue our to my understanding, our only remaining healthy revenue option would be a referendum. So, like I said, I'm an unhappy pragmatist. We have to educate kids with the money we have now, and it's the way it is.
The only thing I think that I would add is it's important, I think, for our community to keep in front of mind that we're healthier than many other districts. So this budget proposal or deal that was struck at the state level, luckily we have that cash fund balance. And so I think when we talk about the other districts who are already borrowing and already paying interest to just operate their schools, it's important that our community knows that we have been fiscally responsible and we've been used our money wisely for the last several years. So when you say the state legislature may want to now make local communities pay more for their schools, we live in a community that's an option for us. And so my disappointment from the state legislature totally comes from a place of we're a healthy school district financially. There's some school districts that'll be devastated by this. So I think that's important. I know we have to worry about our kids in CHOSA. And luckily we do have that cash fund balance, so we can do that at least for next year. And so to me, it just seems, yes, we have this deficit for next year. We have the money. Our staff is telling us these are the positions that we need for next school year to be successful. We use the money we have then, I think, and then work it out for either referendum or make cuts for the next school year budget. But I think we owe it to our students to borrow that money or to use the money we have saved.
Well, no shame in where we are. The shame will be as if we're making cuts 2 years from now, because we know we have a job ahead of us. So no shame in where we are, because we were wise to have a fund balance now. It won't last forever. And we have a very tough job ahead of us as a board the next couple of years.
I think when I look at the numbers and just at what I was getting out with Mr. Brightman, we will have substantial cuts to make in 2 years if there's not a referendum. It's an either or, and it may be a both and. So depending on kind of level, and we don't know what the legislature is going to do 2 years from now, but we've got a 2-year window because of our fund balance. We don't have anything beyond that.
Your unhappy pragmatist would have started today, but that's just me. I'm not saying everybody should believe what I believe, but I have to be true to my philosophy on this. So that's where I'm coming from.
And I would just signal the era of austerity, financial austerity, doesn't work in K-12 education. And we constantly talk about kids coming out of COVID, in the COVID period. What I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from teachers and from parents is that we need more educators on the ground with our children. So I don't know if austerity financially to reduce the staff is even an option. In fact, as I look at it, my philosophy is we need to pay our educators more, and we need more of them, and we need to continue to make this a destination district for educators who want to really do interesting work, and in a very interesting place. I continue to say I love working for this community because it is one of the most unique districts in Wisconsin, if not the nation. When you look at our demographic breakout, when you look at where we're situated, there's some powerful things that can happen here, and we're on the verge of doing amazing things. I'm so, I'll bring it back to when we have educators like Austin Carricker who they're from here and they want to continue to invest, or Mr. Stein, we have the right materials. I would just, and so maybe I haven't been very clear. I don't want us to get distracted by the inability of our state leaders to invest in K-12 education. I think this is now a clarion call for this community to recognize we're not going to get support from the state legislature. That's not going to happen. And we clearly know what we want to be as a community. We know it. And when schools say they need more support, they have been very vocal in sharing that with us. And I believe we have to be in a position to support them when they say it. But I would just urge us all, I've lived through the time period of financial austerity and we made cuts. That doesn't help kids at the core. It ruins culture, and it makes people who have the ability to purchase homes and make decisions around what schools they want their kids to be in. People avoid those communities. And so I don't think that's what we want to be as a school system.
Dr. Jessup-Banger? So I want to just really emphasize and echo what you just said. I feel like in the last few months and what we've just worked through with your awesome leadership, Dr. Means, with the work with Eisenhower, I think it's really representative of us moving in a very positive direction, turning a post-COVID corner, starting to peak around that corner at least. And I would concur. I don't think pulling out resources now, especially since we're being, it's clear on the balance sheet and it's clear with our experts in the district that we can do this year, that we need to make this investment this year. We need to also be smart and talking with each other and looking at the options and learning more and moving forward. But right now, we need to keep investing. The last few weeks has shown us that. The whole last year has shown us that. And it's when we stepped up and really started putting those additional people in the schools that we started to see a response from the kids in the schools. And I think we need to notice that. And we, as a community, yes, there's going to be some big conversations, but right now, our work, I would say as a board member, my work is to say, we need to fund this the way it's being asked. And I fully intend to support that.
Well, I want to come back to something that you said, because I sort of struggle, and I know we've had people come to the mic talking about this idea that we're in a good fiscal position, as if, those were really wise choices that were made over the years or decades to save money. And yes, it's helping us now in this moment, but I'm not sure that that's actually been helpful to us as a school district over the last 10 years. And in fact, we're sort of paying the price for that in these enormous, well, they're not enormous, these very much well-deserved raises that we're giving to our teachers. And it's just the beginning, because we also have talked about our educational classroom aides needing to be paid at a better rate. If we want to be able to staff those positions, because they're going to go elsewhere. And so I think the struggle is that the push is that we have this money now, which is going to allow us to do kind of to pass this budget. On the other hand, the reason we have that money is because it's got us into trouble. So I just want to be really thoughtful about that. And I completely agree with you, Dr. Worley. I'm not a little bit disappointed. I'm very frustrated and very angry that this was the budget that was put forward by our state. This is 81% of children who live in Wisconsin go to public schools. There is absolutely no reason that we are not funding public education the way that it needs to be funded for our children to be successful. And if any time in our lives we needed that funding, it was post-pandemic. And so here we are needing more help. Our students are suffering. Their academic achievement is declining. The gaps are growing, and we got peanuts. So I'm not okay.
And great conversation. I believe it's appropriate for community leaders and the board to take that macro state level approach. I think we can do two things. In education, there are seldom absolutes, and I don't think this is an absolute either. But my focus is to the nearly 7,000 students who attend schools here. I need to make sure that we stay focused on them. Yeah. And I'm disappointed for K-12 education in Wisconsin. I'm disappointed with the fact that we continue to have the largest achievement gap in the country, according to the national assessment, the NAEP. $50 million for a literacy program over 5 years isn't going to do anything. That's all political theater. But that's not why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to pass this budget. But I also just want to, again, send the call out. This is a moment. It's a moment for this school system. It is a moment for educators across the metro area and the state to recognize that we're a destination district, that we want to compensate people well. We want to make sure that teachers have the support they need to work with children. We want to make sure that parents know that they send their child to a public school in Walto, so they're going to be well resourced and get the help that they need on both ends of the spectrum. Be it a child who needs advanced placement or gifted and talented services, or a young person who has an individual education plan. Whatever the case is, we want to make sure that this is a place where people want to be. And so we present this budget to you tonight, board members. This is just another step in the process. The next step, and Mr. Meyer appropriately asked the question annually, and it should be asked, so what does our enrollment numbers look like? We'll know that as we get closer to the third Friday count in September. We're very hopeful that in our first board meeting in October, we can give you an accurate count of what that number looks like and how it compares historically over the years as we track things. We've moved our second board meeting in October to the 5th Monday of October. That's the final day. I think that's October 31st.
Correct.
And so will approve the levy at that time. So this is just another step in the process. We have a lot more work to do in terms of looking at our enrollment at this time, but this is just another step.
At this point, any final board comments? Seeing none, there's no one in the room with us. Is there anyone online with community comment?
No, there are no hands raised.
I will call the roll. Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Mr. Morse,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
No.
Dr. Joseph Anger is a yes. Dr. Hoyd,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer wrong,
Yes.
and the budget passes. Next up, action to approve Gordon Flesh as the winning bid for the district-wide copier lease vendor. And previously we had a community question that I'm hoping you can also answer as part of this. But any reset that we have on this item before going to board questions?
No, same discussion points as we had the last meeting, no updates to it.
Okay.
I can comment if you like towards.
Please do.
So the bid range we received was between 89,547 and 126,457. So that was the range. The upper level of that range was pricing that aligned to the state contract pricing as it's stated within those state contracts. The vendor that we're recommending to go with came in a little bit of 89,547 is Gordon Flesh. And included in that bid, which undercuts the state contract pricing for machines and service, is a technology solution that helps manage prints, volumes, and gives us metrics. It creates a storefront. So our copy center has a more teacher-friendly front-facing storefront to it to input copy jobs, hoping to drive more work to that copy center, which saves dollars and saves time with our instructional staff. So I guess the bottom line is we got an all-in bid undercutting just the cost for the machines and service. That includes about a $30,000 annual subscription cost for this print software also. So I feel really good about this. I think it's going to be both a money savings for the district. There are other levels to this. We'll be looking at standalone printers, at the needs for different schools with regarding that and print services. And I think there's other room that we have to be more efficient in how we purchase print copies within our system. But this is a great first step, getting this bid at the rate that we did.
That's great. Mr. Morse, can you read the motion on this?
It is recommended that the school board approve Gordon Flesh as the winning bid for the district-wide copier lease vendor, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Any board comments or questions on this item? Any community comments or questions on this item online?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay. With that being the case, I will call the roll. Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Mr. Morse,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Josephine is a yes. Dr. Hoyd,
Yes.
Morale.
Yes.
And that action item passes. Next is action to approve the meal prices for the 23-24 school year. Mr. Meyer, can you read this one?
It is recommended that the school board approve the meal prices for the 2023 to 2024 school year. And I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Worley. Any additional information on this that has come forward?
No updates since the last discussion.
Okay. Any board comments or questions on this?
I would just, if I may, I would just comment that this is the year, this next school year, we will be putting out to bid our food service vendor. And we received an email from a community member who I didn't know was a dietitian, so that was good information to have. But we will use a robust process to vet vendor options. I think making sure that student and parent voice and obviously staff voice is part of that process will be very important. But this is a very important year. We hope to bring forth a recommended vendor for the next contract. Currently, we have Sodexo as our vendor, but we'll go through that process and we'll start that this fall, and it'll be it will be a very involved process, but I want the community to know, the board to know that we will be involved in that work next school year. Mr. Brightman and his team will be leading it. So we're really excited to get into that work, to hear student voices. That is one issue where they speak up in regards to, and they should. I mean, it's appropriate that they have voice in the food that they are served. So,
Dr. Mead, will we have voice from students from all three levels?
yes, I think elementary is always the more difficult one, but I think there will be a way for us to get elementary voice as well.
And that means just to highlight that in that email, one of the things I appreciated was the idea that also that gathering the information, be thinking about ways to be creative and offer new and different things as well, looking where it matters where we put our and spend our district resources. So as we think about what we're investing in and how that gives back to the community, how that gives back to the region, just really exploring all those choices.
I agree. I thought the email was timely. It was informative. And again, I want that community member to know that it was well received, and that's the work that we'll get into this fall for sure. Is the vetting process for a new food service vendor.
Any community comment online on this item?
No, there are no hands raised.
I will call the roll. Dr. Worley.
Yes.
Mr. Morse.
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Anger is a yes. Dr. Hoyk.
Yes.
Ms. Heimer-Roland.
Yes.
And that action item passes. Next up is a Finance and Resource Committee update. Thank you very much, Mr. Brevin.
We met actually the day after the last board meeting, so we've actually discussed most of this already tonight, but we reviewed the preliminary budget. At that time, joint finance was still meeting and a decision hadn't been made. So as Dr. Brightman noted, the attachment to this week's agenda has the new figures highlighted in yellow for the changes based on what it looks like is going to pass joint finance. We reviewed the monthly financial report. There was nothing significant, no variances to share that. And then the final thing we discussed was there's a community member who has expressed interest in reconstruction for the East Tower. And there was really no update on that I remember.
Yeah, the update came from the individual who's interested in donating the dollars towards that project. And he had an architect look at and give him kind of a dollar scope to that. And it's 2 to 3 times the investment that he kind of wanted to make towards that. And so he's reached out to the Wauwatosa Historical Society to see if they have interest in additional private fundraising for it or not. And I guess we'll kind of wait and see where that goes, but just wanted the board to be informed and the committee to be informed that that's kind of where that is currently.
So this is just a community member who's grown up in Tosa, and there was a tower at Wauwatosa East, and he really enjoyed looking at it when he would walk through the village and is interested in restoring it or recreating it.
So the tower was part of the architectural integrity of the street that the city did a architecture study not so many years ago, looking at historical buildings, and it was assessed that no one building in that stretch of Wauwatosa Avenue is special in itself as an aged building, like a historical site, for example. But the series of buildings together was significant, and the tower had been part of that. So just a silly footnote, the building we're in now evidently has historical significance as well, which is it's one of our newer buildings yet anyway. So but to the community, the donation vehicle that was a part of this, and I'm sure Mr. Brightman can speak to specifics to it. if I put, $60 in my 401k years ago, and it's now worth $100, if I donate that 401k to a charitable cause, the $40 appreciation on that 401k is not taxed to me, the donor. Well, so if I took out the $100, well, I'd have, $40. No, I'm goofing this up, I'm sure. But the point is that the donor donates the basis and the appreciation or the earnings and gets credit for having donated the full market value of the thing, but isn't taxed on the increase that the investment made over the years. And I have known other people who've done this. People do this for cancer research donations and various things. So people who put money in these investment funds, the 401k was the wrong example, I'm sure. But whatever the increase in value of that over the years, the donor gets the heartfelt value of the full $100. I gave $100, but when I put this money away for savings, I only put away $50, and now I get to give $100 based on my 50, and I don't pay. I never have to pay taxes on the $50 that it increased. So, just for the community out there, if there's someone else who values that street with the way it used to look, maybe your investments will qualify for this as well. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Ms. Hammerwell, thank you. With that, we are at the point of any final public comment on non-agenda items this evening. Jamie, do we have anything online?
Yes, we have one hand raised. Deb Falk-Palak, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Thank you. Hi, Deb Falk-Palak. This is something that I need a little help finding information on. It was asked and answered at the PTA council meeting. It was asked and answered at the last school board meeting, but I can't find the information. So we were told that there would be information out there telling people when the TOSA 2075 task force is meeting and information on that. And I can't find it on the district. It's not on the calendar I know the meeting is tomorrow, but we were told again at PTA council and at the last school board meeting that this information would be made publicly available. So could that be done? Or if it is done and it's somewhere other than on the district calendar, could someone please share that information as to how the public can see that and listen and watch the meetings? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There are no more hands raised.
Tomorrow at Underwood Elementary School at 6 p.m. The public is more than invited to attend, and we will be posting any materials that are shared at those meetings once the meetings are over. So there will be a landing page that people who are unable to attend those meetings are able to, they're able to get the materials. This will be the kickoff meeting. Then we'll have some homework for the task force. Part of that task force homework will be reviewing the projected enrollment outlook for the district. We received that report on Friday. We'll be providing that information to the board the board and the task force in early July. And then we'll meet again as a task force in August and start digging into that work. So again, the first meeting's tomorrow at Underwood Elementary School, starting at 6 p.m. And the webpage will have a landing page.
Sure.
Dr. Means, you were in the district all those 20 years ago when the TOSA committee was formed. And do you I can't recall whether you were an every meeting staffed attendee, but do you recall the type of material that was presented to the TOSA committee? I mean, it was everything. It was we learned more about school district and a community than what, is that what this is going to, are those kinds of materials going to be presented as well?
Yes, I think this is, so I did not attend every meeting. I was a junior staffer then. But that
HR director, but anyway,
yeah,
keep going, yeah.
But I think this will be very similar. We have an expert, and what we want to do is be very impartial. And so we have experts coming in. We have an expert tomorrow coming in from the Wisconsin School Business Officials Organization to give an overview of how our schools funded in Wisconsin. And we'll discuss the charge of this task force. And as you've appropriately, Mr. Meyer, pointed out to us constantly, our revenue is driven by our enrollment. And so having a real good handle on what our projected enrollment is going to be in this community is something that we want the task force to sit with this report and study it. And then we'll have the individuals who created the report come to the task force in August to give us an overview of what they have determined. I think there's some really interesting patterns that have emerged that I would not have learned about it without this report. And so I'm looking to a robust conversation in August with the task force, and I'm confident that the board will also want to have a discussion. My only caution would be I would ask the board not to get too far ahead of the task force. That's why we have 60 plus community members investing their time and eventually giving you recommendations on what direction we should take.
So why I asked that question about, so I knew what I was talking about, having watched that 20 years ago, I urge any member of the community who is a Wauwatosa patriot, a forever Wauwatosan, the presentations will be just fascinating and informative about Wauwatosa and the Wauwatosa schools and the history and the future and how things work. It is just a tremendous civic opportunity to learn about how things work. And last time it happened was 20 years ago. And so it doesn't happen often. This is a rare opportunity to have really like a 9-month course or whatever in how things work and how the community works and how the schools work. So I urge everyone, please, to follow this. And it's quite an interesting thing to watch.
Anything else on this item? Seeing no other public comment, could I ask to have an emotion to adjourn us into executive closed session?
So moved.
Do you need me to read the? Okay. It is recommended that the school board adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parens 1, parens C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider proposed revisions to the terms of the superintendent's employment contract. It is also recommended that the school board adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parens 1, parens G, to confer with legal counsel for the governing body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved regarding Fox v. Wauwatosa School Board of Education. And I so move.
May I have a second?
Second. I did that right. I went dead on the last one, but I was okay.
Dr. Worley.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Ingers, yes. Dr. Hoig.
Yes.
Ms. Heimer-Rollins.
Yes.
We are moving into executive closed session. We may reconvene into open session coming out of closed session.